parents will never let me leave. I'd like to kill them first.
Would you like me to kill your parents for you?
Hey humans, it's Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, I do videos on creepy and disturbing things. And today I am like super excited about today's topic. So you know how you'll just like randomly remember some weird show or movie that you saw way back in the day? Now it's one of those movies that like nobody's seen, and it's like one of those crappy early 2000s movies that I would be shocked if anybody has seen it that watches this video, but it was like terrible, but like so terrible it's like good. So the movie is based on this real true crime story, and it basically is about this group of kids that form this cult, and they literally think they're vampires. They go on the run after killing one of their group's parents. The movie itself is way more hilarious than I even remember. The true story itself is horrifying and bizarre. So get a cup of tea, get a cup of coffee, some kind of beverage, and sit back, because today we're going to talk about Vampire Clan. We'll start with the movie. It's a 2002 movie of the same name, Vampire Clan. It stars Drew Fuller, who sniffs a lot, but he's pretty hot anyway. And then it stars that girl who plays the super hot maid on the first season of American Horror Story. The girl that, if you're like me, gave you some very confusing feelings when you first saw it. It also has that one girl who was on a few episodes of 6 Feet Under, but people are less likely to remember her. Pretty much everybody else in the cast is not very well known and hasn't really gone on to do anything else. So the movie starts off with this blonde girl who's making out with her boyfriend in the car, even though her parents think that she's at work. She arrives home, sneaks in past her curfew, goes upstairs, and finds that her phone line is cut, and she doesn't think this is weird at all. Pro tip, if you get home and your phone line is cut, it means that somebody's been in your house. So she goes downstairs to get this late night snack after she changes into her pajamas, and instead of getting a snack, she finds a pool of blood and finds that both of her parents have been brutally killed. And then this girl, Jenny, can't find her little sister, Heather, anywhere. She, of course, calls the police, and the police arrive at the scene, and she tells them that she believes that her sister must have been kidnapped with whoever did this. But Jenny soon finds out, horrified, that she was not in fact kidnapped, but that Heather ran away with her parents' killers. And then this random friend of the group, who we never get any explanation as to who this person is really, says, when asked by police why they would do something like this, says, because they're vampires.
Because they're vampires.
So then we see the ringleader, Rod Farrell, and the rest of the group is caught. And wow, he is just something special.
You must be thirsty.
He thinks he's really, really cool. He starts talking to the cops and like doesn't even try to get away with it. Flashes of this vampire hotel, and you see them drinking each other's blood and shit out of each other's wrists, flashes by while he's talking to the cops. Side note, this was pretty much my face and my reaction watching the entire movie, because the acting and the writing was just so bad, and watching Rod, the character, think that he's just above everyone and that he's so cool and edgy and misunderstood just makes me laugh. I think it makes me laugh even more because when I watched this when I was a teenager, I was so infatuated with Drew Fuller that I thought that this character was legitimately cool, even though it totally glamorizes murder. But it was also even funnier because the real Rod Farrell was actually like this in the true story and mocked police officers and stuff, but we'll get to that. So we kind of see the end of the movie first, and the rest of the movie is Rod and the group confessing and retelling the whole story to the police. It all starts when Rod and Heather are planning to run away together, and he tells Heather that he would happily kill her parents for her. But of course she thinks in the movie that he's just joking, and she's like, no thank you, sir. Then Rod soon learns that another girl in the group, Charity, is pregnant with his baby. And he's just like so angry, like it's all her freaking fault. Apparently Rod just sleeps with all the girls in the group, I think. I think they're just kind of all a family, and so they all just sleep with each other. Soon after that, we see Heather running off to the vampire clan and leaves her family a note to tell them that she loves them. They wait for Heather to come out of the house, and Rod tells the rest of the group that him and Scott are going to go in and steal Heather's parents' car so they have a better car to run away with. Scott is Rod's accomplice throughout this whole thing, and he is just like always high. So Rod and Scott are about to steal the car, but then they realize, oh, I don't have a key, and there's no key in the car, so they have to go into the house. Rod gets a crowbar from the garage before they break in, and he seems very excited about this. So it cuts away, and the next thing you know, they're all driving away, and Heather freaks out when they're in her parents' car, but everyone gaslights her and tells her that she's just overreacting. Scott is freaking out, and you can tell something bad happened. Charity finally tells Heather that her parents are dead because Heather keeps incessantly asking them all about the car. Heather thinks that Charity is just joking. She always thinks everybody is just joking when people keep talking about and threatening to kill her parents. They then run out of gas because Scott is so dumb, and Heather's gonna take off while Rod's gone to go walk and get gasoline. But Scott doesn't let her since Rod made him make sure that nobody did anything while he was gone. Rod returns right as a cop comes to talk to them since he thinks they all look suspicious on the side of the road like that. And the cop talks to Rod, and he doesn't run the car's license or anything and just gets sweet talked by Rod until he lets them go. Heather makes Rod talk to her in private and wants him to assure her that he didn't actually kill her parents. She wants to hear it from him. So it flashes back to what actually happened in the house.
I beat your father's head in with a crowbar. The one that's in the car. Then your fucking bitch of a mother threw coffee on me, so I bashed her head in two.
And then we see Rod tell her he killed them and is super happy about it, and then holds her down when she freaks out, whispering in her ear, "We will rule this world." Just like the cool vampire he is. Heather can't really do anything at this point because Rod is frightening and everybody's just controlling her and telling her to shut up. The group continues on their way to New Orleans, and they all realize pretty quickly that they are running out of money. Dana calls her mom desperately and asks her to wire them some money after explaining that they're in trouble. But of course, mom is working with the police and gives the number and the location that Dana gives her right to them. All of them get arrested, and we're back at where the movie started. And then they tell us what happened to all the real people in the story. Now let's get into the true story of what happened with Roderick Justin Farrell. Rod was born on March 28th, 1980 in Kentucky. His mother had him as a teenager, and to make ends meet, as dad wasn't in the picture, she was an erotic dancer and a sex worker as Rod was growing up. She had some questionable relationships with minors as well. One claimed that she was trying to convince a 14-year-old boy to have sex with her. And then all that's rough enough, but Rod continues to have a very tough childhood. He alleges that he was sexually abused by his grandfather. He said that he would be sexually abused by his grandfather and some of his grandfather's friends, even saying that they all gang him as young as 5 years old. Now I have to say that this was alleged because I don't think he was ever convicted for this, but I tend to believe the way that Rod's upbringing was and what he ended up doing, that this is probably a true story. And I'm guessing that I feel bad for little Rod who went through this. I don't feel bad for older Rod, but little baby Rod who had to endure this, that's awful. So then, as a young teenager, he got it in his head that he was not in fact human, but that he was a 500-year-old vampire named Visago. He got into this persona after his mother introduced him to a role-playing game called Vampire the Masquerade, which, I know, so much to unpack there, probably made this persona as some way to escape and think, get away from his horrible, horrible upbringing and his mother, who did not sound like a peach by the way she treated minors. And I'm sure that this was some way to escape. But took it way too far. As Rod got a little bit older, he met like-minded people, and together they all thought they were vampires and created their vampire clan, aka a cult. The Vampire Hotel was apparently a real place. It was a real abandoned building in the middle of the woods that they used to go in for their rituals and to hang out, and they really would go and drink each other's blood. I don't know if they did it as much as they showed in the movie, but apparently that is a real thing that they did. So the sexual abuse, obviously, they did not show or imply in the movie, other than the fact that they briefly imply that his mother was questionable, but it doesn't make any sense if you don't know the real story. But a really interesting discrepancy between the movie and the real story is that Dana Cooper was actually supposedly the real ringleader of the group. She was the real leader of this whole cult, and I believe she was 19 and the others were younger than her. It wasn't actually Rod. They made Rod the leader in the movie, I think, just to make it more scary. Another discrepancy is that Heather, the real Heather, was not actually with Rod in real life. And I don't believe that Charity was actually pregnant with Rod's baby either. So Heather and Rod were friends in real life since they were both part of this vampire clan, but apparently Heather convinced Rod that her family was abusive. She even told Rod that her dad would sexually abuse her. This, given Rod's past as a little kid, enraged him, and then he kind of got obsessed with killing Heather's dad to save Heather. Supposedly, Heather did not know of Rod's plans to kill her father. But Rod's obsession with what he thought was Heather's living hell made him believe that he was actually some sort of saint doing something good, and that he was actually rescuing Heather from her abusive home. However, it was later determined that all this abuse that Heather told Rod about probably never happened. There's no proof that it actually happened, and according to all the other family members, their parents were very loving and created a pretty good home environment. So this actually makes me a little bit suspicious of Heather, because then I do kind of wonder what her intentions were when she told Rod that. Was she just trying to get attention? Did she know more than she let on, and she did actually know that Rod might do this? Or was she just trying to manipulate him? Like, what was the motive there? Now for the actual killings. Rod was only 16 years old at the time. As we talked about, Heather and Rod were never actually together. So Charity and Dana were actually driving Heather to her real boyfriend's apartment so that she could say goodbye to them before they all ran off. That's where the three girls were in real life when Rod and Scott went into Heather's parents' house. So this was on November 25th, 1996, which blows my mind that the movie came out in 2002, so they only filmed this movie a couple years after all of this went down. This part is true to the movie. Jennifer Wendorf, which is Heather's older sister, found both of her parents dead in the home, brutally killed. Dad, also like the movie, was beaten except on a couch with the crowbar, and Mom in the shower. Kind of like they show in the movie, Rod's original plan was only to kill Dad. He was actually gonna let Mom live, but Mom walks in the room right after Rod killed Dad, and she freaks out. Like in the movie, she throws scalding coffee on Rod, and this enrages him, and then she starts putting up a fight and trying, as anybody would with intruders in their house, and this makes him so mad that he decides, fuck it, I'm gonna kill her too. Dad was actually found with burn mark on him in the shape of a V, but unlike in the movie, in real life, Rod also put a dot next to the V for everybody in his little vampire clan. And then the group headed for New Orleans, the vampire capital of the world. It was not Dana who called for wiring money, it was actually Charity who called her grandmother to wire them money. The grandmother was also working with police, and she convinced the group to go to a Howard Johnson's hotel nearby, basically trapping the group and saying that she'll put money there and that that's where they need to go. But the grandmother gave this information to the police, and police were actually waiting for them when they got to the hotel and arrested the group. They were all arrested and sent back to Florida. Here's what happened to everybody. On February 12th, 1998, Farrell was only 17 at the time of his trial. He actually pled guilty to the murders and claimed that his whole group was innocent. He did admit that Scott was an accessory, but Rod claimed that Scott had nothing to do with the actual act itself. Rod actually got sentenced to death at first, but it was soon reduced to life without parole since he was a minor at the time of the crime. Charity was sentenced to 10.5 years for third-degree murder and robbery/burglary with a deadly weapon. Dana got the same charges as Charity, but she got 17.5 years in prison. And I wonder if this is because Dana was not a minor. I believe Dana was 19, and maybe because she was the leader of the group. I'm not sure. But either way, they also, even though they weren't on the scene, it was later found that Dana and Charity supposedly knew about the plans to kill the parents and didn't do anything to stop Rod. That part was not super clear in the movie, but that is why they got jail time as well, because they knew about it, didn't do anything, so they're, associated or accomplices as well. But Charity and Dana are both out now. Scott Anderson, the real accomplice, got the exact same charges as Rod Farrell did at first. He got life without the possibility of parole. However, he was able to get a resentencing just in 2018, a few years ago, where it was reduced to 40 years in prison with the time he already served counting towards that time. So he's actually eligible for release in 2031. But I have to say, this is way more fair. I totally agree that if you're an accessory to something like this, you definitely should be charged and punished for it. But it seems odd to get the same sentence as the guy that actually carried out and did the killing. However, I don't think that Scott was actually as anxious and freaking out about the killings as they portrayed him in the movie. It's said that the two both helped burn the victims after they killed them, and Scott also did ritualistic dances with Rod in the living room after they were dead. I'm sorry. The fact that they died is not funny whatsoever. It's just the fact that I'm picturing these two teenage boys doing ritualistic dances in the living room because they think they're vampires. It's just absurd. The whole thing's absurd. But I also do think that Scott was probably very likely scared of Rod on some level, especially since he just watched him do this. So he probably didn't want to mess with him too much, and that's why he went along with it. I mean, I would be really scared to try to intervene in that. I like to think that I would, but I can understand why he was super scared. So 40 years just seems a lot more fair for not actually hurting anybody. And even though I know my opinion about that doesn't mean much, but even relatives of the parents' families even thought that this was fair, and they did not oppose this resentencing for Scott because they didn't think that he was going to go out and do something like this again if he ever got out. They were way more concerned with keeping Rod behind bars for the rest of his life. And thankfully, they succeeded in doing this. Rod also got a chance for resentencing in April of 2020, but he was again given life without the possibility of parole, the judge just thinking that he could not be rehabilitated into society. So hopefully Rod will stay in jail the rest of his life. And I mean, given his upbringing and the fact that he was so young when he did this, I do almost have mixed feelings about it. Like, I do almost think he could be rehabilitated, and he says that he's a different person now. He says that he wouldn't do something like that again, and that he's very remorseful for what happened. He claims that he was manipulated into killing them because Heather convinced him that she was being abused at home, and it made him angry, and he thought he was saving her, yada, yada, yada. But on the other hand, it's like, would you want him out of jail? Would you want him in your neighborhood? He was under 18, but he was old enough to know right from wrong. I feel like once you're past the age of 11 or 12, you know killing bad, not killing good. So it kind of, I'm torn, but I'm obviously grateful that he can't hurt anyone ever again. Okay, so, and just like in the movie, they dropped all the charges against Heather, and it was determined that she had nothing to do with it and that she had no idea that they were going to carry this plan out. At least all the evidence pointed to that. So can you guys comment and let me know what you all think about Heather? The movie sure makes her look very innocent, but I have to question those almost proven false abuse accusations. Again, was she just trying to manipulate Rod? Did she actually not know what he was going to do? And maybe if she didn't. Why did she say something like that? Was it just for attention? I mean, she was only 15 when all this went down, so she was also super young. I would like to think she didn't know what was gonna happen, and I like to think that she was truly innocent, but there's just something seems just slightly off to me. I mean, she was part of a vampire clan, but not for me to say. Let me know what y'all think in the comments below. Please give this video a like just to help the channel out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one.
It is no wonder the jury unanimously decided to recommend to this court that Roderick Justin Farrell should die for each of his crimes. The court agrees with the jury that in weighing the aggravating circumstances against the mitigating circumstances, the scales of justice tilt unquestionably on the side